Nuclear weapons have been part of the global landscape for nearly 8 decades, yet much of what the public believes about them is shaped less by technical reality and more by decades of movies, Cold War propaganda, and persistent misconceptions. The danger with myths is simple. They distort how individuals, communities, and even governments think about one of the most consequential threats humanity faces. Tonight, we begin unpacking the top 5 nuclear myths people still believe. Some are rooted in misunderstanding, others in deliberate disinformation, but all of them are worth challenging, because clarity is the first step toward preparedness and informed debate. Myth number 1. If a nuclear bomb drops, everyone instantly dies. This is perhaps the most widespread myth, and it is reinforced endlessly by Hollywood. The cinematic image is almost always the same: a blinding flash, followed by a mushroom cloud that swallows everything within sight, leaving nothing but ash and silence. While such imagery captures the terror of nuclear weapons, it does not reflect reality with accuracy. The destructive power of nuclear devices is extraordinary, but it is not uniform. Survival depends heavily on distance from the detonation, the type of bomb, the altitude of the explosion, and surrounding terrain. For example, at Hiroshima in 1945, within a 1-mile radius of ground zero, nearly everything was obliterated. But survivors outside this radius endured burns, radiation exposure, and trauma, not instant death. Many lived for decades afterward. Modern analyses conducted by civil defense organizations consistently emphasize that tens of thousands, sometimes even millions, of people outside the immediate blast zone could survive, provided they take protective actions quickly, such as seeking shelter underground or in reinforced buildings. Fallout shelters, improvised shielding, and simple measures like staying indoors for 24 to 48 hours can dramatically reduce exposure. The persistence of the instant death myth is problematic because it breeds fatalism. If the general public believes survival is impossible, fewer people will prepare, and fewer will act rationally in an actual emergency. The truth is stark but empowering. Survival is possible for many, and preparation significantly increases the odds. Myth number 2. Radiation after a nuclear explosion lasts forever. Closely tied to the first myth is the assumption that nuclear radiation renders affected areas permanently uninhabitable. Popular imagination often equates any nuclear event with the desolation of Chernobyl or the exclusion zones of Fukushima. However, the reality of nuclear fallout is more complex. When a nuclear weapon detonates near the ground, it pulls soil, debris, and radioactive particles into the mushroom cloud, which later fall back to Earth as fallout. This fallout is dangerous, especially in the first hours and days, when radiation levels are extremely high. But radiation decreases according to a predictable rule: the 7-10 rule of thumb. After 7 hours, fallout radiation drops to about 1/10 its initial level. After 49 hours, it is about 1/100th. Within 2 weeks, levels may be low enough to allow limited outdoor activity in many areas, though hotspots can persist. It is true that in cases of extremely heavy contamination, certain zones may remain dangerous for years. But most fallout from a single detonation decays rapidly, making survival and eventual recovery possible. Historical evidence underscores this. Hiroshima and Nagasaki, devastated in 1945, were rebuilt into thriving cities within a few years. The persistence of this myth creates psychological paralysis. If people assume that nuclear war equals permanent unlivability, they may fail to recognize that structured recovery is feasible and that civil defense planning, from food storage to temporary evacuation, can save lives and communities. Myth number 3. Nuclear weapons are too destructive to ever be used. This myth is as comforting as it is misleading. Many people assume nuclear weapons are so devastating, so catastrophic, that no leader would ever actually press the button. In other words, the very horror of these weapons supposedly prevents their use, but history tells us otherwise. Nuclear weapons have been used twice. Hiroshima and Nagasaki remain stark reminders that leaders can and will employ nuclear force if they believe it serves a strategic or political purpose. During the Cold War, both the United States and the Soviet Union developed detailed plans for nuclear war. These weren't abstract scenarios. They were operational blueprints, with cities, bases, and targets assigned. At the height of tensions, launch crews sat underground with missiles on hair-trigger alert, prepared to act within minutes of an order. The concept of mutually assured destruction, MAD, did create a deterrent, but deterrence is not a guarantee. Human decision-making under stress is fallible. History is filled with close calls. The Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962, when the world came within a hair's breadth of nuclear exchange. Or the 1983 false alarm when a Soviet radar officer, Stanislav Petrov, chose not to report what looked like incoming U.S. missiles. His hesitation prevented a potential retaliatory strike that could have triggered all-out war. And beyond accidents, the idea that nuclear weapons are too big to use ignores the reality of tactical nuclear weapons. These smaller warheads, designed for battlefield use, exist in the thousands. Countries like Russia have openly incorporated tactical nukes into their military doctrine. For example, in scenarios where conventional forces are losing, they might use a limited nuclear strike to de-escalate, forcing the enemy to back down. The myth of too destructive to use is dangerous because it makes the public assume nuclear war is impossible. In truth, the barriers to nuclear use are political and psychological, not technical. And history shows that when leaders feel cornered, desperate, or emboldened, the unthinkable can become thinkable. Myth number 4. Missile defense can protect everyone. This myth is rooted in optimism about technology. Many people assume that advanced missile defense systems, like the U.S. ground-based mid-course defense or the Aegis ballistic missile defense, can shield an entire nation from nuclear attack. The reality is sobering. Missile defense systems are designed to intercept a limited number of incoming missiles under controlled conditions. Their testing environments are highly scripted, and even then, success rates are mixed. In real combat conditions, with decoys, multiple warheads, electronic interference, and sheer volume, no current missile defense system can guarantee protection from a large-scale strike. For instance, Russia's arsenal includes missiles that deploy penetration aids, dummy warheads, chaff, and maneuverable re-entry vehicles that make interception almost impossible. China, meanwhile, is developing hypersonic glide vehicles capable of traveling at extreme speeds and unpredictable trajectories, designed specifically to defeat missile defense. Even in the best-case scenario, if defenses intercepted, say, half of incoming missiles, the other half would still devastate cities, infrastructure, and populations. It's also worth remembering that nuclear delivery is not limited to intercontinental ballistic missiles, ICBMs. Weapons can be launched from submarines just off the coast, delivered by aircraft, or even smuggled in covertly. Missile defense provides some protection, but it is not, and never will be, a national shield. This myth persists because it provides comfort. The idea of a protective umbrella makes nuclear war feel survivable at a strategic level. But overconfidence in missile defense can lead to dangerous political decisions, such as provoking adversaries under the mistaken belief that retaliation can be neutralized. In truth, missile defense is a tool, not a guarantee. It may blunt limited attacks or rogue launches, but it cannot stop a determined nuclear power from inflicting catastrophic damage. Myth number 5. Ordinary people can't do anything to prepare. This is the myth that makes people throw up their hands and say, "If nuclear war happens, I'm finished, so why even try?" It's fatalism in its purest form, and it's exactly what governments worried about during the Cold War. Civil defense campaigns in the United States, Britain, and the Soviet Union were all aimed at combating this sense of helplessness. The reasoning was simple. Preparation, even at the individual or community level, can make the difference between life and death. Here's the reality. There are meaningful steps people can take. For example, shelter matters. Being in a basement or even the center of a large building can reduce exposure to initial radiation and fallout dramatically. Time matters. The most dangerous fallout radiation occurs within the first 24 to 48 hours. Staying sheltered during this period increases survival chances exponentially. Supplies matter. Stocking essentials like water, non-perishable food, medical kits, and basic communication tools means you're not dependent on a collapsed system in the critical first days. Research has shown again and again that with even minimal planning, many more people survive. In fact, the U.S. Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, estimates that proper sheltering could save millions of lives in the event of a limited nuclear exchange. And yet, the myth persists, largely because popular culture prefers the dramatic, hopeless narrative. Movies and TV shows portray nuclear war as an instant extinction event. But the truth is more nuanced. Catastrophic, yes, but not universally fatal. Why does this matter? Because believing nothing can be done becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. People who dismiss preparedness rob themselves and their families of the chance to survive and rebuild. So let's put the full list of myths in perspective. 1. Everyone dies instantly. False. Survival depends on distance, shelter, and action. 2. Radiation lasts forever. False. Most fallout decays quickly, though hotspots can persist. 3. Nukes are too destructive to be used. False. They have been used, and tactical use remains a real possibility. 4. Missile defense protects everyone. False. Defense is limited and cannot stop a major strike. 5. Ordinary people can't prepare. False. Preparation saves lives, both historically and in modern simulations. Taken together, these myths show how distorted narratives cloud our understanding of nuclear risk. Some myths exaggerate the horror to the point of hopelessness. Others minimize the risk with illusions of safety. Both extremes are dangerous. The reality sits in between. Nuclear weapons are survivable in many cases, but only if people understand the facts and prepare accordingly. Here's the takeaway. Nuclear strategy isn't just about politicians, generals, or weapon systems. It's about people. Millions of people who live in cities, towns, and communities that might one day find themselves in the blast radius or fallout path. Understanding the truth behind nuclear myths doesn't eliminate the threat, but it arms people with perspective. Knowledge reduces panic. Preparation increases resilience. Awareness is power. The most important lesson is this: preparedness is not paranoia. it's peace of mind. Just as families prepare for hurricanes, earthquakes, or wildfires, nuclear preparedness deserves the same clear-headed planning. So now I want to hear from you. Which of these myths did you believe before today? Did any of them surprise you? And do you agree that preparation, even for something as frightening as nuclear conflict, is worth the effort? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if this breakdown gave you clarity, hit the like button and subscribe. That way, you'll be ready for our next deep dive into survival strategies, civil defense history, and the realities of modern nuclear risk. Because at the end of the day, the future belongs to those who prepare, not those who panic. Stay safe, stay sharp, and I'll see you in the next video.